Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Starting today's video with some comforting words from our beloved Jesus Christ as we're going into a deeper and heavier conversation around grief. Up until now, we've talked about how emotions work, ECs, ETCs, a simplified overview of trauma, the ETC of fear, and today we're going to go over the ETC of grief. Grief is most commonly known through the lens of clinical depression, psychologically, and some of the characteristics of clinical depression includes loss of interest in previously enjoyable activity, having low energy, having a psychomotor retardation, which means you might be walking a little bit slower because depression and grief feel really heavy, really heavy. It's like walking in molasses sometimes. Just feeling low, depressed, sad, having memory problems, difficulty with concentrating and thinking, as well as just a depressed mood, sadness, melancholy, and one of the most threatening symptoms of suicidality. And let's just take a moment to talk about suicidality because this is a very important and life-threatening topic. I did some research back in Montana for suicide prevention because Montana had the highest suicide rates in the nation for quite some time. And that was actually highly improved after the pandemic because they got access to resources. And why I'm bringing this up is because a few things that I learned about suicidality includes having this hopeless thought that whatever depressive funk that we're in will never go away. And what people who have felt suicidal really wanted was to stop feeling bad. But because they didn't know how to stop feeling so bad, because grief is heavy, it's hard, it's very hard to sit with, that they would rather just take their life rather than to feel that way. And I give you my word, if you create some space between that feeling and the thought and the idea of harming yourself, you will get through it and it will go away. And all you need to do to create that space is talk to somebody. So please see the number for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you're having any thoughts, you're not alone, it's anonymous, and someone is out there to talk to you who's trained, who cares, and you belong here. You belong here because you exist, and you will get through it. It will pass through you. There is hope on the other side. There are a lot of resources available. And that brings us to another piece of the source of grief, which is a lack of sense of belonging, or feeling shame, or going through loss, or even burnout. Burnout, we tend to feel more in maybe our work settings, school settings, social lives, but it's the same feeling. It's something that we used to love and have motivation for, and we've lost motivation. We're tired, we're fatigued. We don't care about doing it anymore. We've lost our passion, our drive for it. Those are milder versions of clinical depression. It's just showing up in a different area. We've just overly exhausted ourselves. Again, grief is very heavy and exhausting. It zaps all of our energy, as well as hope, as well as a vision of a future. It tends to get us stuck in the past. We tend to feel bad about ourselves. We tend to feel bad about a situation. We're having a hard time getting over a loss. We tend to get a little bit stuck on one person or one thing as a source of our happiness, which is outside of ourselves. And that's a reason for our grief. And just losing a loved one is hard in general for everybody. It's this reoccurring feeling that will come from time to time, because it's going deep into our hearts. For someone that we love, we miss, and we can't see again. Now, those are more obvious forms of grief. Loss, breakup, loss of a job, loss of a house, loss of a pet, loss of a loved one. Burnout, which I did give a little bit of an overview of right now, which is more of a socially accepted or maybe a lower grade version of depression. Then there's clinical depression, which is quite debilitating. And then a severe form of depression would be to the point of wanting to take our lives. Again, remember, you just want the feeling to go away. You don't need to have your life go away. And there are plenty of resources out there. You are important, you matter if you are going through any thoughts of suicidality. Okay, so please check in with the crisis hotline. And then there are those negative thoughts we have about ourselves, which usually come back to shame. We think that there's something wrong with us, or we're flawed, or we're broken. And often with shame, we're constantly feeling like we've done something bad, we've said something wrong, or we are broken somehow, or not good enough. Actually, that is the source of feeling some shame, like not good enough or not enough. And that's where a lot of body image issues happen, or unhealthy relationships may happen, or a lot of addictions and codependency may happen, because the feeling is so bad and so uncomfortable, and we don't know how to move through it because it's heavy and it gets us stuck in the same place with that heavy, uncomfortable feeling, usually in our chest. That's where we feel grief the most. We just want the pain to stop. So we might take prescription meds for it. We might self-medicate with recreational or street drugs or alcohol. We might distract ourselves with work. Unless we get burnt out there, then it's no longer a source that'll keep us distracted from the pain. We could throw ourselves into a relationship that may not be healthy for us, or emotionally eat, or even do more risky behaviors to challenge death, basically, because we don't care anymore. We lose that care. We have a hopeless feeling. So it might lead to a lot of risky behavior, like excessive unprotected sex, driving recklessly, driving under the influence, for example. These are all sources of, I don't care about myself, I don't belong, I'm not lovable, who cares? It feels so bad to be me that I'd rather just not be here anymore. Another way that people try to cope with that heavy, painful feeling is doing a lot of identity shifting. And that's where imposter syndrome may come and plague people, where we may be extra performative. We can't be authentic because we feel our authentic self is going to be rejected or abandoned. And we will put on a performance for others in order to be accepted or loved. And what we're seeking is a connection, is to be loved, is to be accepted. But what we end up getting are little pleasure hits or dopamine hits. And there's no connection in that. There's like a high and then a low, a high and then a low, but no fulfillment from that approach. Because that high and low is dealing with the symptoms, is dealing with the byproduct of the grief, which are thoughts of issues of self-esteem, thoughts of I'm not good enough, thoughts of I don't belong, feeling like we're going to get rejected or abandoned. If someone walks away or leaves us, it'll take us to or we lose someone, it takes us to a place like we can't move on or go forward, or feeling like a failure, again going back to not being good enough. And that's when we tap into those codependent addictive behaviors. We try to numb it, or we try to control it, or we try to distract ourselves from it, and then we're playing ping pong with the symptom of the grief, not the actual grief itself. As hard as it is to sit with grief, the way out of it is through it. And all of the tools that you learn through therapy, or however you've been researching out there, or through our support systems, is to get you to a place where you can develop enough strength to sit through the discomfort. And I give you my word, when you go through it on the other side, it is lighter. And it is possible to get through it. To this day, I can say with all confidence, nobody's emotion has ever killed them. It's the way that they've tried to escape their emotions that have harmed them or may have made them think of taking their own lives. But the actual emotion itself, actual grief itself, that pain, that heaviness cannot kill you, because little babies have these big, big painful emotions too, and their fragile little bodies can get through it. So you, viewer, obviously are an adult at this point or much older that you can comprehend this video. That means you are capable of moving through the grief. You just have to go back to how you normally function to allow it to move through you. And that's why I've talked about the emotional constipation and the emotions that cause suffering. So hopefully this gave you a little bit better understanding about grief, a little bit better understanding of how to make it work. There are resources out there for you to help you get through this really heavy feeling. And in the next video, we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into anger. Thank you, and may peace be with you.